Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechPalate Insights. I'm Katrina Odhiambo, and this is where we explore how food safety, technology, and communication show up in the way the industry actually runs. Today, we are getting into a conversation that sits at the core of how food businesses actually grow. That is food safety, compliance, and what it really takes to make systems hold in real environments. I'm joined by Richard from SHEQ Consulting, a team working across Africa to support manufacturers in building systems that don't just pass audits, but actually work. Richard, it's great to have you. So, kindly tell us, who is Richard?
All right. Thank you, Catherine, and quite a lengthy introduction, but yeah, we do appreciate that. My name is Richard Jackson, and I'm the founder and managing director for SHEQ Consulting, based in South Africa. A bit about myself. I've got a degree in food science and technology, and I've got also a lot of other, qualification that I've built over the years um, to be able to specialize in the area of food safety, quality, and other management system standards like ISO 14001 and ISO 45001. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Our head office is based in Port Elizabeth with offices in Cape Town, Johannesburg, and we also service other regions across Africa.
Thank you, Richard. You've told us where SHEQ Consulting is based. Can you tell us more about the work you do across the region?
So we do everything compliance um, in the manufacturing industry. So we service businesses across food manufacturing, pharmaceutical, packaging manufacturing, and any other auxiliary services that are linked to the manufacturing industry, um, including, global gap for on the farming side. We also do systems for storage and distribution, health and safety. We do uh, quality management systems, ISO 9001. We also do ISO 14001, which is environmental, and the rest of the food industry sectors, whether it's dairy, meat processing, food packaging, produce manufacturing, um, confectionery, you name it. So wherever there's food manufacturing or anywhere in the food supply chain, we do service, consulting, training, doing internal audits, and obviously advisory wherever we are needed.
Nice. So for consulting, auditing, internal trainings, you are the guys. Plus
Yeah.
implementation.
Plus implementation,
Nice.
yes. How can I forget that? Yeah. So yeah, so basically we do coach and mentor clients on how to implement systems. So we help businesses to break down complex requirements of the standards, and
Mhm.
we tailor-made systems to make sure that obviously they really work in real life rather than just being a tick box exercise.
Nice. So what would you say inspired you to found SHEQ?
Um, Look, the early years of my career, I was in the wine industry, then I went to the dairy industry, and in the
Mhm.
meat industry before I went into consulting. And I think over those years, my experience across different industries, there's things that I thought, could really be improved in terms of how systems were structured, because, some of the systems, they contain a lot of information, but sometimes not
Mhm.
as meaningful information. And for me, I saw that there was a huge gap to actually assist the industry to make sure that systems that gets implemented for their sites is actually tailor-made and actually customized. And also, I love sharing knowledge. So I thought, okay, if we go into consulting training and systems implementation, we can be able to share our knowledge bank with the industry, and also at the same time be able to also keep on, topping up our knowledge bank in the process.
Nice. Talking about knowledge bank, how has the food safety and compliance field changed over the years in Africa?
Uh, Look, I think I'll be very maybe brutal uh, on this one. I've had a lot of experience, looking at systems in many countries, South Africa, um, you know, outside South Africa, you know, Central Africa, East Africa, the Asia Pacific region, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries as well. And what I've seen is that Africa, there's still a huge gap. And I think consultants like us and trainers, you know, we have to work really hard to bridge the divide that's available at the moment. And even though there's still obviously a huge divide if you want to compare with systems across, if you look at first world countries that really take food safety seriously, just like as we are trying to do as well, Africa has improved over the years. If you look at systems requirements, they've evolved as well. There's much more consumer awareness, which means that businesses are required to comply more because consumers are much more aware of what they are buying. And also in terms of the responsibility of businesses to make sure that the product is safe. So, food safety requirements, they've evolved, and food safety in general, or systems, they've also evolved. And I want to say that in Africa, businesses have really improved. If you want to go back 10, 15 years ago versus what businesses are doing now, it's really commendable. Even though I think, we still have to make sure that we realign our mindsets as businesses that do manufacturing, to make sure that we try to put the customers first in everything that we do in terms of whether safety, quality, or any other compliance requirements.
Nice. It's actually so good to know that we are not stagnating. At least we are not where we were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But now you see, with this evolution, there also must be challenges, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yes. So what are some of the most common compliance and food safety challenges you've seen among manufacturers today?
I think the biggest challenge sometimes is investment, because a lot of companies, in as much as these requirements are available to implement, some businesses, they do this so that they can get the contracts, the $1 million contracts with the retailers or whichever customer that they are supplying. But I think there's also, a lot of need to make sure that businesses invest into the systems, whether it's upskilling their staff members, bring in expertise like us to make sure that systems are really implemented to make sure that they give them value, and also to improve the infrastructure. There are some suppliers which, when I go around doing audits, some of them you might find that there's repeat non-conformance that have been repeating from audit to audit, or sometimes that the infrastructure gaps that haven't been addressed for a long time. And I think businesses in the African context needs to really take a big turn and make sure that they invest in their people, they invest in infrastructure to make sure that you know we make sure that the citizens of this world are safe with the products that they buy. So yeah, I think that's what I can say.
You've talked about auditing a manufacturer and then finding the same issues over and over again. What
Mhm.
do you usually do when that's the case?
Unfortunately, you know, I'm gonna, I'm gonna, you know, respond to you with two different hats.
Uh-huh.
If I'm a consultant consulting for a client
Yeah.
where we implementing system or maybe we're just providing just advisory services to close out non-conformances that are raised,
Mhm,
we usually, find time to engage the business owners or the
mhm,
key decision makers to make sure that they understand that repeat non-conformances, obviously, that's a systematic breakdown, right?
mhm.
And these things might end up manifesting, for example, in food safety recalls, which could be a much more bigger expense, right?
True.
So we try to make sure that they get context in terms of what could be the consequences if they do not obviously address non-conformances accordingly, other than obviously, you know, getting major non-conformances raised or maybe losing contracts. But the intention of this system is to protect the consumer. And if that's not done,
Mhm,
you might end up having legal cases. Um, Obviously, if you end up, um, making people sick or, if there's any claim that comes to business, then, another head, if I was doing an audit, obviously
mhm,
we have to escalate, the non-conformances. Let's say if it was a major non-conformance, you may escalate um, to a critical. If it was a minor, you may escalate to a major. But it also depends with each scheme or standard that you're auditing because there's quite a number of management system standards, ranging
mhm,
from BRCGS, FSSC 22000, um, ISO 22000. There's also HACCP, and other retailer requirements that you know businesses may be required to implement. So each requirement might be having different escalation requirements, but definitely if there's repeat non-conformance, the same issue is not getting addressed, we have to re-raise those non-conformance, but we escalate the severity to make sure that businesses also take it a bit more serious. And in worst
mhm,
case scenarios, if it's, for example, GFSI standard, which are globally recognized, the businesses might end up getting suspended until they've put in measures or sometimes repeat audits. So yeah, that's in a nutshell without overwhelming you with the, the intricate details of how auditing is done.
No, it's actually not overwhelming. It's interesting. And I
Mhm.
love where you mentioned that now you communicate to these businesses the consequences of their actions. And the way you're
Mhm.
communicating it, you're telling them in a language they understand. Because most businesses usually care about return on investment. So if I do this, how is it going to add to my business? So when you tell them about brand image damage, you tell them about those costly recalls. I think now that's communicating in their language, and that's really impressive. So
Yeah.
this one may seem, you've mentioned it a bit because most businesses, they don't fill the gaps you've highlighted. Yes, that is just one. But I'd like us to tell us even more where these businesses usually fall short when they're preparing for such audits or certification.
So it really varies, sometimes
Mhm,
smaller businesses, they've got their own issues. Then there's these corporate businesses that's got their own issues that are repeating. And
mhm,
for smaller businesses, what I've seen from experience is that sometimes there's lack of training. There's not training that is done to make sure that you fulfill the requirements of the standard or of the requirements, or fulfill, the business requirement that they may have laid out in their own system.
mhm,
Um, and sometimes you might find out that there's a lack of resources in terms of personnel that are obviously competent. You might find out that maybe one person is managing a system that must be managed maybe with maybe four quality controllers, maybe the quality manager, maybe there's only just one quality manager who must manage the system and also do all the other shop floor work. So I think for businesses that are in those circumstances, I think it's also a call to say, invest in providing competent personnel, upskill your personnel to make sure that systems are implemented adequately. And then for smaller business, I think one thing that I almost forgot to mention now is that you know, lab testing sometimes is a requirement to verify that products conform either to the regulatory requirements or to any customer requirements or any contractual requirements that the retailer or the customer may have laid out in their specifications or in their contract. And sometimes businesses, they do not want to spend the money, or sometimes they do not want to test at a frequency that is proportional to the risk. So they want to do just the bare minimum. So those are some of the common problems for smaller businesses. But for bigger businesses, you know that sometimes those things, but they've got the resources available, they've got maybe personnel available. So money might not be an issue, but also sometimes an issue is maybe having a system that really is not really well entrenched across the entire business. You might be finding situations where they are operating like in silos, where, for example, somebody who is in training, they only know training. Somebody who is in, for example, the lab, they only know the laboratory. Somebody who is in procurement, they only know procurement, without really the entire business understanding how they are their own internal suppliers and customers, to make sure that obviously they pull towards the same direction. And when that happens, sometimes we find out that some of the evidence that may be presented, maybe during audits or maybe during consulting, you might find out that, in terms of, knowledge across the business of, let's say, food safety fundamentals, there might be maybe one group of, say, maybe one group of people that's really knowing really what's going on. And the knowledge gap between the different departments sometimes is quite big. Yeah.
That's great. So now, how does SHEQ help these businesses to overcome these challenges?
All right. So to overcome these challenges, we really like to, to view our relationship with businesses as a partnership. So we actually partner with businesses to help them make sure that their systems are actually customized to what they need. If it's training, the training is already done correctly. If this training needs analysis, depending on their business environment, we help them to do the training needs analysis, develop training plans, roll out the training that they require. And also, the good thing is that we know the requirements of the standard. We know the competence requirements that are expected in terms of the requirements of the standard. So we make sure that their training material, if they're doing their own training material internally, we help them to customize that. If they're outsourcing training, we make sure that we can customize training tailored specifically for the businesses. And we also run other training programs, for example, for the food safety and quality culture, that helps businesses to make sure that the beliefs and the views around the systems are actually aligned across the entire business. Yeah. Catherine, I think you just went on mute.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. All right.
All right. So what makes your approach different from other training and consulting providers? Because I know there are many out there. Why should they just come to SHEQ?
As we really take pride in what we do, and all of our staff members, they are really highly qualified. You know, they have been qualified as lead auditors, all of them, and we make sure that we relay a lot of experience that we gain through conducting certification audits back to our clients that do consulting with us. If it is training that we do, we make sure it's not just a matter of just reading the material to the client. We give practical examples, real situations that we have experienced ourselves during audits or during consulting, obviously without disclosing any confidential information, but there's a lot of knowledge that we can share with our clients to help them improve their systems. And we also internally conduct our own calibration workshops with all of our staff members to make sure that everyone is calibrated in terms of how they understand the requirements. And we do have some information sharing sessions that we do across our staff members every now and then to make sure that when we go out and see clients, we actually share that information as well with clients to make sure that it's not just another business transaction, but actually something that they get value out of.
Nice. So what kind of results have your clients experienced so far? I know you've worked with several clients.
Look, I
If I were
think
to call one of them today, what would they say for sure?
look, I think, if we were to call some of our clients, and I'm talking from some of the biggest multinationals to the smaller clients, I think they would say
If
that.
you say biggest multinationals, are you allowed to quote a few names?
No, I think, it's not a secret because, some of those sites are actually on our website. So we service the likes of Coca-Cola. We also service the likes of Montego Pet Nutrition, the Lovo Sugar Group, which has got many sites across the country and Zambia. And a lot of packaging companies like Utamaki that we also service, Coracel, just to mention a few. And the one that I've just mentioned are really multinationals that has got different sites across the countries. And regardless of size, whether multinationals or smaller companies, just to come back to your question, I think one thing that they will really say to us, if somebody was to ask them, is we really are subject matter experts, and we really go out of our way to help our clients. And we also, keep on giving clients information. If we find any information that we know that is pertinent for their system, we always email this information to them without spamming their inboxes. And every time when we send emails, they know that it's information that is very valuable. And one thing to mention, all the clients that we have ever worked with, nobody has ever failed their audits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever failed their audits.
Yeah.
And do they also implement this beyond the audit?
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at our business model, we haven't been doing any marketing for over the years. A lot of the work that we've been getting is through word of mouth. So I think that alone is a testament to say that, maybe we're doing a good thing. And a lot of these clients, looking even at individuals who are our point of contacts that we work with, it's always very nice to see how people have developed themselves.
Yeah.
In terms of their knowledge, in terms of things that they can implement, just because we have been working with them for a long time.
Nice. So you said SHEQ has a strong presence in Southern Africa. How are you now approaching growth across all these other regions, let's say East Africa?
Yeah. So we have partnered with TechPalate Insights, so which I think it was a huge milestone for us. We made the right decision at the right time, and we really can't wait to see what the future holds for these two business entities. And I'm very much sure and confident that we are in very good hands. And thanks to you, Catherine, and your team. You've got an amazing team, and your knowledge base around the industry, and also around how to move businesses in the right direction to make sure that we maximize opportunities available to us. It's been amazing.
Yo, thank you. I feel very right. I'm feeling
Yeah,
myself
please,
right
that's
now.
true, by the way.
Did you just hear that? Did you just hear
Yeah.
that? We are glad to have you on board, SHEQ. So what industrial market are you most focused on currently? I know you're in the food industry, but you serve other industries too, right?
Yes, definitely, yes. So we
Mm-hmm.
service, the food industry, the
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceutical industry. We
Mm-hmm.
also do any other manufacturing industries where we
Mm-hmm.
implement other non-food systems like ISO 9001, ISO 14001. So 9001, that's the quality management system standard. Then
Mm-hmm.
14001, there's been a new standard that just got published, the environmental, that was published or revised in 2026. And then there's also the health and safety certification, which is ISO 45001. And I
Mm-hmm.
think over and above that, we also do other systems, for example, the SAPRA GMP, which is like for medicine, it's a regulatory requirement for the industry that's doing medicines like complementary medicine. So we implement such systems. And I remember one of the projects I think that we have done, which is completely outside the usual food industry, was
Mm-hmm.
we did an ISO 9001 project for a carbon fertilizer technology company, right?
Nice.
Where they manufacture, carbon fertilizers, and it's like, it's like a chemistry lab, but obviously at a much bigger scale, where where they've got some reactor tanks, where
Mm-hmm.
they're utilizing catalyst and all of that, like pure chemistry. And it was quite nice to implement ISO 9001 for such a business. And right now, there's a project that we have also commenced for a company that is in aviation. So
Mm-hmm.
they do parts for the aviation industry. So one of the requirements that they comply with the QMS requirements, so that they can be a conduit between the OEMs, which manufacture the parts, and obviously the various um, companies that own private planes.
Amazing, amazing. So you recently made an audacious move. Yes?
Okay, tell me about it.
The Food Safety Summit is coming right up.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes?
That's a big one.
Sure. And you are participating, not just as an exhibitor or delegate, but as one of the sponsors. What
Mhm.
motivated this move?
Look, I think, firstly, I think at this time, you know, we've been in business for 7 going to 8 years now.
Mhm.
And we thought this was the right time to actually go and meet people who always support us. People who always, when we've got something posted on LinkedIn, for example, they always support
Mhm.
us. They always, click, share information that we share.
Mm.
And I think the Food Safety Summit, for us sponsoring, just to show a commitment to the industry that, look, we're here, we want to partner and also be able to avail ourselves and show people more what we do.
Mhm.
So, I really encourage everybody or anybody who is coming to the summit or who want to join the summit. That's happening the first week of June in Johannesburg. Come meet our stand and meet us and see, what we do. And we'll also be available to, if you've got any question that you want to ask, system related, we're more than happy to answer your questions.
Yes, and they'll definitely get a free compliance check when they visit your booth. So, what
Yeah,
is one
definitely.
key message you'd love them to take away from interacting with you during the summit?
I always say to our clients that, a lot of these clients that we service, people always contact us for information and sometimes non-billable. If something that is going to take you an hour to think about, if it's going to take me
Yeah.
10 minutes, flick me an email, send me a message.
Mm.
We'll gladly respond to you, gladly help you. Right. So I just want to, everybody, who be coming to the summit or who be tuning in, know that if you've got any questions relating to systems, if it's going to take me 10 minutes to respond, it's going to take you an hour, I'm more than happy to do it. We're more than happy to do it for you. If you've got much more need, obviously, to get any consulting done, obviously, we can sit down and talk. But look, we always available to support the industry. Yeah.
Wow, you had him. What's gonna take you an hour? It's gonna take him 10 minutes, and he's not even bragging. So see you at the
Oh,
Food Safety Summit. Come next month on 2nd to 3rd June. Where exactly, Richard?
it's happening in Johannesburg at
Mm-hmm.
remind me again, Catherine.
I don't know that the name of that place. I don't know the name. I just know it's in South Africa. Port I don't know if it's Port Elizabeth. I'm not
No,
sure
no, it's in
about the
Johannesburg.
exact
I'll
name.
be able to give you. My
Mm-hmm.
team is the one that's mostly working on that, but I'll be able to tell you
Mm-hmm.
just now where
Mm-hmm.
the summit is going to be. I think it's at Emperor Palace in Joburg,
Emperor Palace, Joburg.
in Johannesburg. Yes. So
Okay.
yeah, at Emperor Palace in Johannesburg. Um, so
2nd to 3rd June,
second
right?
engineers. Yeah, we will be at booth number B3. Come visit us.
Very important. Very important. Underline.
Yeah.
With B3, get your free compliance check with a man that will take just 10 minutes to sort your 1 hour question.
Yeah. And I
So,
think also one thing to mention there, Catherine, there's been a lot of
mhm.
changes to the FSSS scheme. And I know everybody is hyping about it, all of
Yeah.
that. Look, we'll be available to just have a quick engagement in terms of obviously our views from what we now understand after going through the requirements. Really, just a high level overview of what our thoughts are regarding, the certification process, the way it's going to be done in FSSC version 7, as
Mhm.
well as what it means for sites that needs to be audited.
Do you want to give us a snippet of that for those who want to make it to South Africa?
So basically, what I can just say to you is that it's 12 months transition period. So we've got
Mhm.
12 months to look at the
Mhm.
changes, to roll out all the training, and do gap assessments, do all the changes, and you know who to ask. We are more than happy to assist you. So feel free to contact us for more information.
Mm. So, in just a brief overview, what are some of the highlights? What would you say has changed between version 6 and now the new version 7?
Yeah, so for between version 6 and version 7,
Mm.
some of the things that have changed, obviously, is the prerequisite programs. Um,
Mhm.
the previous programs, previously, there used to be one standard, which was the ISO 20002 Part 1, 2009. So now
Mhm.
it's been replaced with two standards,
Mhm.
right, which is ISO 20002 Part 1, 2025 and ISO 20002-100. So they
Mhm.
brought in new requirements. So elements, for example, like food fraud, which used to be just in the additional requirements, now it's also
Mhm.
part of the prerequisite programs. Um, the categories of the FSSA scheme, they are now less granular. They are much
Mhm.
more clear. And also there's much more clarification around allergen management, especially for animal feed, for those that are doing animal feed. And then the requirements have been much more refined, for example, around food loss and waste, because I think, you know, around food loss and waste, I think that's a good one because a
Mhm.
lot of businesses, there's a lot of food that's going through the back door to the pig farmer,
Mhm.
yet our brothers and sisters are dying of hunger out there. So one of the requirements aligned to the UN SDG goals
Mhm.
is that businesses have to have a clearly outlined food loss and waste policy and
Yeah.
objectives aligned to that. So just
Mhm.
a tip of the ice of what's coming.
Wow, that's a whole lot. And those who come are going to get all that for free.
Yeah.
Hmm. By the way, you had to be there, but since I'm not there, at least you've gotten a snippet from him. You can do your online booking sessions if you need to know more about the transition periods and what's expected of you as a manufacturer to the new FSSC version 7. So, back to our food safety in general. What are some of the trends do you see will shape food safety and compliance in this our African region in the coming years?
Yeah, I think in the coming years, like coming back to the point that I mentioned earlier on, that I think there's a lot more awareness in terms of the need to comply with the regulatory requirements as well as general food safety requirements in order to
Yeah.
protect the consumer.
Mhm.
A few years ago, we had a big recall that happened with one of the manufacturers in South Africa where many people died because of listeria. And I do not think
Yeah.
that any business would want to go through that. Right. So I think, for the future, businesses are becoming much more aware of their responsibility um, to make sure that products are safe and just
Mhm.
compliance in general, because consumers, whether you're buying a piece of equipment, whether they're buying food, whether they're buying, packaging, whatever it is, consumers are becoming much more aware.
Yeah.
Right. So I think businesses going into the future, the trend would be a lot more sites getting certified or moving towards compliance. And we have seen this trend increasing over the past few years. For example, if you think about 3 years ago, there was, I think, just over 1,000 certified sites that are under South Africa only.
Mhm.
But to date, there's over 1,500 sites certified to a globally recognized food safety system, right? I'm talking about just one standard. And there's also other standards like, for example, BRCGS, SQF, IFS. And I think, the trend is that people are becoming much more aware, and businesses are also unlearning themselves to the old idea of saying systems that just take money out of them, and also understanding their social responsibility to make sure that consumers need to be safe. And we need to protect the consumers.
Thank you for that, Richard. So, if a company wanted to strengthen their compliance systems, what advice would you give them?
Uh, I always say that businesses, they're just as good as their internal auditing system, how critical businesses are on themselves, right? And a lot of businesses, you know, some of them, they do just a quick internal audit before the external audit, but that's not good enough, because remember, the internal audit program is the one that looks after the system in the 11 months that the auditor is not there. Right. So to strengthen the system, firstly, prioritize the internal audit program, implement it properly. If there's any issues or non-conformances raised, treat them like it was an external audit. Your corrective action system, utilize that to make sure that you understand the underlying root causes of whatever that has been raised through the internal audit system or through any other verification program. And then from that, you might find out that, okay, you might be having these much issues during internal audits, but you cruise through your external audits, and from year on year, you definitely um, improve in terms of how your system meets the expectation of the consumer or the customer or the requirements of the standard or any other regulatory requirements. And if you want internal audits, like I mentioned earlier on, we are also available to assist. Or if you want to train your own internal auditors as well, we can also assist in that regard.
Great, Richard. And by the way, how often should companies conduct these internal audits?
Uh, it's risk-based. But
Mhm.
what I can just say to you is that internal audits needs to be done based on risk, taking into account the importance of the processes and previous internal audit results. and risk profiling as well. So in a nutshell, one is to do a risk assessment, take into account the importance of the processes. If you've got, for example, thermal processing, where you're heat treating the product, if you've got maybe ready-to-eat products which are going to be consumed by young kids, for example, or immunocompromised people, then the frequency of the internal audits should be linked to that particular risk, right? And also take into account what was the outcome of the previous internal audits. Then we can come up with the frequency, but definitely not once a year or twice a year.
Would I be wrong if I say most companies do the audit once or twice a year?
Oh yeah, but that's very wrong though.
Okay,
You
so
know,
they
and I
register your
think,
processes there.
can I tell you? I think the bigger
Yes.
problem is that then they don't raise any non-conformances. So what I do is that, you know, sometimes I raise non-conformances just because businesses are not actually utilizing the internal audit program as they should be doing. There's never a perfect system.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been a very lovely, very informative. So, just a parting shot from you, Richard. If there's just one thing you'd like the industry to better understand about compliance and food safety, what would it be?
I'd like to say that it's everyone's responsibility, right? From the shop floor
Yeah.
worker to the senior manager who is sitting somewhere at the head office. Everybody within the supply chain, including service providers, everybody is responsible to make sure that products are safe. It's also important to make sure that businesses also understand that they are doing this to protect the consumers and at the same time protect their own businesses as well. So yeah,
Nice. Thank you for this valuable insights, Richard. And if there's one thing we're taking away from this conversation today is that strong systems aren't just built for audits and not for those internal audits that you do as routine once a year or twice a year, but they are built for reality. And those are the conversations we'll keep having here at TechPalate Insights. And thank you for joining us. See you in the next one.
all right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye, everyone.